welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I will be talking about mythology and the paranormal. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. There are many ways to support the show. You can always share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. You can also sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. That is the base plan there. And you can also check out the merchandise store, which has all kinds of shirts and other items with designs made by friends of the show. And support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And please follow friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of this show on Saturdays when she's able to make it. And Michael Strange, host of Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows online 24/7 for free, as well as my own. I forgot to add that in there. So, yeah, that's basically, I think that takes care of everything I wanted to go over as far as the introduction. I will be changing my recording schedule. I've already made posts about that in the Discord. I'm going to start recording at 8 o'clock on weekdays, 8 p.m. Eastern. And they'll be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And those will be just hour-long streams, or just about an hour, where I'll be recording my usual episodes I put out every week, but then also recording some extra ones that I save and put out as needed when I need to take a break or can't make it for a recording, whatever reason. And so that's the plan. I'm hoping to keep the shows at the same time. So that's 10 p.m. Eastern. And but I'll let everyone know if that does change for whatever reason. And go from there. And like I said, that'll be 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I apologize that it doesn't work for everyone, but as you all know, there's only so many hours in a day, and can only do what I can do. So, and the shows will still come out on the podcast and YouTube feeds. So it's not you won't miss anything in the long run there. So, but so this is something I've been thinking about for a while now. Just when it comes to, I'm not super familiar with a lot of mythology. I've just looked into it here and there. I've listened to some books on it, but a lot of it just didn't stick right away. So, but anyway, I had this idea for a series on mythology and the paranormal, and I'm very happy to have. Let's see here. So I click on that. Very happy to have a co-host tonight along with me. Once they're able to join in here, and that'd be Jen, the Arcane Observer, and glad to have her here. And thank you. And I know it was sort of, you weren't sure if you were going to be able to make it, but I really am glad you could be here.
Yeah, I was able to make it. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great.
Awesome. Well, it's good to be here, and I'll just mute up and listen to what's going on. Thank you.
No problem. And yeah, everyone, like I said, I always say in the episode, the introduction there, please check out Jen's channel as well. So I have a document here. It's basically it's an AI generated document, but it is based on research, and I've heard of a lot of these things. So I'll just be going over these bullet points here and talking about them as we go, and I will make sure to ask Jen what she thinks as we go through these. I don't know how many we'll get through in one night, but that's okay. There's plenty here to go over. Uh, so I was interested in what I could find out about uh, similarities between mythology around the world and modern paranormal experiences. And I was able to get a whole list here of these bullet points. So we'll start with that and just talk about them. And you all are welcome to add your own thoughts on this in the chat as we go. And because I am definitely not an expert on mythology. And so anyway, this first thing I want to talk about here is humanoid beings and divine visitors. Across cultures, from ancient Mesopotamian texts, Sumerian, cuneiform, Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, Hindu traditions, Mayan and Aztec cultures, and Native American lore, accounts exist of humanoid figures descending from the heavens, possessing advanced knowledge, and interacting with humans. Modern UFO and or alien encounter reports describe strikingly similar humanoid entities claiming extraterrestrial origins. And of course, there's one thing here that I'm sure some of you are already thinking about. That whole concept of uh, ancient aliens, ancient astronomers. Uh, um, and that's I think that's a fascinating topic. I don't really know a ton about it, but yeah, it's something that it seems like it's possible, but also who knows where these other beings come from, if they are coming from out there in space or just other dimensions. But looking at the chat here, uh, yes, ancient astronaut theorists say yes. Yep, from Mike there in the chat. So again, this is just talking about these figures that come to people around the world, and a lot of it is said to be mythology, but there's so much of it that seems to be similar. These figures that came to people and had information about agriculture and astronomy, all these other things, and it's always fascinating when if you come across similar reports of this, and then of course everyone reacts differently, but um, so yeah, that's the first bullet point here. I'm just thinking of all the different shows and podcasts I've kind of listened to where they talk about um, depictions in both in um, oral traditions, oral history, but also images that have been created by people around the world, either in caves or just on rocks, that seem to show figures that aren't human, and that always has fascinated me. Or they're humanoid, but again, not exactly human. And so I think this is one of those points here. Um, so, uh, and forgive me, I don't do these kind of bullet point show uh, things too often. So, but Jen, if you have any thoughts on that, you're welcome to join in again.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's no reason to not think that there are or that there are demons at all. I mean, it makes sense that there would be a vast array of creatures in this world existing alongside, right beside us in this world. They don't even have to necessarily, even with the concept of demons or aliens being from some other place within our universe, it makes perfect sense that there would be a vast array of creatures in this world. Even if to some degree being dimensional in a sense, it's still similar to like a say single cell organisms working in a hive mind network or any array of cryptids being able to exist. Because I think along with humanity, there's the opportunity, there's the window in the world that we live in for them to exist along with us. So to think that we are the top tier or the only um, supreme, type of intelligence, the idea that there could be an incredible array of non-human intelligence being encapsulated in different types of beings and creatures, it would make perfect sense. It'd be okay, even though it could be disturbing, just to see what kind of intelligence that would look like, since it wouldn't be necessarily a human intelligence, but could still be superior in some ways, and that it could be that it existed the whole time, the same way that many of the different, creatures that live at the bottom of the ocean, or that live um, at a microcosmic level in our, and they don't have to necessarily be from outside. They, in our world that we know, here on the earth, even, it would be perfectly, reasonable. And if you were to say that they're from somewhere out in space, from one of the stars, or from any of those types of concepts, and got here somehow through some means, also makes perfect sense. So the only barrier would just be to think that, we can see all the varied amount of existence on our own planet and in our own world. And so it's a limited view, and it doesn't actually fit the paradigm of the rules of our world. So it makes sense that actually the rule would be that they do exist, that there could be and might be, such beings existing all along.
Right.
That's what I kind of
Also
think
in
about
the
it. Yeah.
yeah, in the chat, that's also says octopus is alien, and that's a good example of an amazing creature that can is just does all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think that I'm very much of the opinion now where it's always to me it's always and there probably are other beings here, and always and maybe always have been, and it's also possible again that other beings could come from other worlds, um, because we don't even we don't even really have simple easy space travel, and to think that just because there's no way that we know of that anyone can travel across the universe quickly, easily, doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means it's not. We don't know of it as of yet, and that
Yeah.
doesn't mean other beings can't have figured that out. That always kind of bothered me about that being the one thing that is used to sort of discredit or completely disregard the whole idea of again extraterrestrials. That always bothered me because again it goes back to that viewpoint of we are supreme, and I don't think that's the case at all.
It's not necessary for that to be the case.
Yeah.
I mean, we see all the other types of apex predators, and even, non-predatorial creatures that, and I'm not saying that alien life is predatory. I'm saying that there could be an intelligence level that is competitive with humanity. In addition to
Right.
that, I mean, if you look at the way that, dimensional thinking, literally though, is something like a day fly. Think about the common housefly and the amount of space and the way that time affects them, and how fast, and how I've heard that they even slow down time. Like it is not, they don't slow down time, but it's such a way that it's as if time is slowed down for them, and they're able to calculate, you're moving in slow motion for them somehow. Like they're able to perceive your motion goes slower for them. That's why they're able to evade. That's what I've heard. And regardless, I mean, the amount of space being covered by different creatures of different dimensional um, size. And so, like ants living in their own world, for example, or if you think about a huge, like one of the whales in the ocean, the amount of space that they're able to travel, versus a human trying to swim that, or, being in your own element. Birds fly well, but I mean, just the differences of like, for example, in that case, migration patterns, and that humans don't, are not, they're not that kind of creature, so they don't do that. But if you were to conceive of creatures who can do all kinds of different things, then that would be the case, that there could be existing easily I mean, there's every reason to think so, actually, when you really consider it, especially when you involve the insects, the insect world, or if you consider the amphibians, the reptilian realm. So just all the different types of organisms, and then going down to a microcosmic level with single cell organisms and things like that, of the vast array, which appears to be it is interdimensional in a way, while it's still existing in our world easily, you know.
That's a neat parallel to the way people say they've seen Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Dogman just appear and or vanish as well. And that always fascinated me, that idea of these other beings having a natural ability, not even necessarily a technology, mechanical thing, just a natural ability to either go between dimensions or make themselves completely hidden. It's I mean, using light or bending light. Again, there's reports of what they call a I forgot the name of it, but glimmer. There we go, glimmer, almost like you can see the shape of a figure, but you can't see any details of it, and it's just like light is being bent around it. I've heard a lot of reports of that over the years too.
Yeah, instances of camouflage, basically that different rules apply to those, types of creatures. So, I mean, having these different natural abilities to mimic or to um, evade being seen by what might be prey or maybe seen as predator. So it does make sense, especially being able to mask themselves, or so these creatures being like cryptids, for example. I mean, they may be capable. The cheetah, for example, can run 70 miles per hour or something like that. Or you have the common greyhound can run up to like, I don't know how many 40 miles per hour or something. I don't know, or 40 kilometers per hour, however you say. So these types of special abilities amongst those sorts of creatures, and just in general, the varied type of life forms and what they are all capable of, and so much so we can't even I can't even put it into words. You
Right.
have in the fish realm, like in the aquatic, just all of the abilities of, for example, like was mentioned, the octopus or the squid, the cephalopods, their abilities are incredible. Just it's so huge. The life, the level of life forms, and even things that aren't technically even alive, as you would think of it, like in the single cell organism level, where they kind of just absorb their environment. It's more of a chemical reaction to the environment, yet they are alive, you know. So it's fascinating, I mean, that's a simple thing to say, but like, it's hard to express when you really think of the huge magnitude of life forms, and that they're very easily, without it being silly at all, to think that there could be um, alien life form. Even the concept that they're coming from somewhere else in our galaxy doesn't even make them necessarily alien to our universe, since we do too. We
Right.
contain all the same elements on the table that are found out there. There's no. It's very rare that we come across some kind of new um, element, in general. So there's still a type of, I guess you would call it like a brotherhood, even amongst at that level, even if they are something completely foreign, you know. So to what we think of as being an intelligent creature, and they could still, even at that level, at whatever level you want to think of, have just as advanced of an intelligence as humanity in a completely different manner, in a different function entirely, you know.
Yeah. Alien to me has always just meant unknown or unfamiliar. It's not necessarily um, something that's completely separate from this
Yeah,
universe.
yeah,
Also, cat Swedes, you are correct. Cats. Yeah, they're our our alien overlords that have taken over. We just haven't figured it out yet. But yeah, and I think I had another point, but I forgot. No, you know what this does lead to though? Talking about sort of taking on the environment and or changing to adapt to it. This next bullet point here is shapeshifting and transformation. So let me read this real quick. It's a short one. Uh, says shapeshifting appears universally in mythology. Greek gods like Zeus and Proteus, Norse god Loki, Hindu Nagas, Nagas, Chinese, I don't even know how to say that one, Huli, in the space, and then Jing. Um, and then it says Japanese Obake, I'm not sure. Irish fairies, Scottish kelpies, and Native American skinwalkers. And then parallels modern paranormal reports of entities appearing in multiple forms or disguises, which is definitely something that you hear about now. Even with shadow figures, they don't always maintain a human form or always have a human form. I've noticed that. I've heard about that as well. So that's fascinating. And yeah, I've heard about different figures in all those places that they mentioned there. Um, the idea of changing shape, changing appearance for different reasons is definitely still around in paranormal reports. So, um, but I'm just thinking of even figures of light. Sometimes they don't always have. They're not always in a uh, an orb shape or a person shape. They can appear different ways. I've found a couple over the years reports from people talking about seeing streaks of light, not necessarily orbs or people or even animals, just light moving in weird ways, almost like lines, um, or like fabric, like wisps of fabric.
Yeah.
And that to me is fascinating. That's something I hadn't heard of until just recently.
It made me think of I was trying to think of what it was. There are types of aquatic creatures that can hypnotize other creatures. Like I think it was, had to look it up, but the cuttlefish is able to hypnotize its prey in some instances. But the idea that a creature could have I don't know how they would do it. I mean, I haven't looked into that or anything, but affecting the mind of the observer too. So
Right.
they could either encapsulate it and literally be able to, you know, change the way that they appear. And I could think of that as being like, I mean, you could pick it apart and try to imagine what that would be, but is it some kind of like a parasitic, um, like a microorganism that is able to take on the appearance of its host or something like that? Or in the case of that, some creatures could change the way that you perceive them so that you're seeing something, how would a human shapeshift and truly believe that they're something entirely different? Now, I mean, there's different people talking about that there's substances involved in some shamanic travels and things like that. But on the other hand, I mean, if it's some type of where they do actually go into some kind of out of body experience, I don't want to get too woo with it because I haven't really thought about it deep enough to get woo with it about like how they would
Oh,
necessarily
you're
do.
fine.
But
Yeah.
even at that level, that they are able to make the mind of the observer see them a certain way, that would be significant. If you were to encounter something like okay, like David Icke talks about reptilians, and that humanity, no, I don't believe in reptilians. I'm not saying that. I don't believe or not believe about that at all. That's just kind of, became a very popular idea. And I'm not, going to
Right.
necessarily go into that either. But the idea that, is it possible that they are making you see them a certain way? And in magic, they talk about a glamour where a person is able to put on a sort of, there's even that with charisma, that humans do that, where they make you think that you are somebody that you're not. You know, so
Right.
there's this interesting thing going on there entirely, So I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean that reminds me of my the first experience I'm aware of in my cousin's house where I saw just the head of an older woman above a clothesline, but I saw her in full detail, which my eyes could not physically do that. So there was some kind of telepathic contact that I didn't know that was possible at the time because I was a kid. Um, that allowed me to see the same thing that my cousin was seeing, and who knows, it probably could have been telepathic with him too. He just didn't think of it that way. But where we saw something that we both saw the same thing, even though we had different levels of physical vision, but it could have been some being that was showing themselves in a certain way to us for their own reasons, and that's why I was able to see it, even though because I was born legally blind, technically I shouldn't have seen anything except for a blur. And but I saw the figure in detail. Well, the figure, the head in full detail. So, but yeah, I do think um, contact with other beings, sort of getting into our minds, or at least connecting with our minds to appear as they want, is definitely a possibility, just based on that one experience alone.
Yeah. Okay, not to okay, demons, right? I know this is like it's so souped up, but the concept of the genus, the genius and the demon, the the Juno, these different aspects of this type of force of effect from the realm of what appears to be in the invisible realm. But in this concept, and a lot of things I've read about it, and I can't cite any sources or anything like that right now, but that there's this possibility that they are not even just in the mind, that they are an actual. If you look at Plato, um, Socrates, talking about that kind of that daemon idea, that it's an impact upon the very passions of life, and it's the creative spark, but that it can go to such extremes, in some way. But demons, as they're described, being able to impact even ghosts. So the idea that you have ghosts manifesting, if they are some type of imprint or an impact on the environment from just the memory of them existing in that space, and there's sort of a leftover energy, the demons are able to work at that level with that energy that's existing there to some extent, and are able to even change the environment through like a parapsychological means by manipulating the energetic, like the electromagnetic field of that environment, similar to like an undercurrent of water and things like that. So, like in parapsychology, they'll pick up on things like that there's water under the ground and that like up high, but like near the surface in that area, or there's something, there's some type of charge in a way. And but the demons themselves are such a powerful type of creature. Now, some cultures believe that they're a literal creature that are able to kind of summon that out of people. They're able to, that's why they have the reputation that they do, is that they are able to bring that up in people, like to rise that kind of energy in them, different types of energies. But it would make sense that they could impact the world of ghosts if ghosts are what they, and if they are described, if ghosts are a sort of imprint or a trace left behind through the memory in the environment, you know.
Right. And even I've heard of in some more extreme cases where people pick up on they feel like it's multiple spirits, but then there's one dark entity, they say,
Yeah,
that is
something behind
controlling
it.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yep. Yeah. So let's move on to this next point here. We might as well get through a few of these. 'Cause there's like 20 of them, so this is not going to be. We're not going to be able to finish this whole thing tonight. But the next one now, this is something I feel like I may have experienced, as I've said before. Uh, Abduction and kidnapping motifs. Mythological creatures across cultures. Selkies, sirens, fairies, uh, pukas, Pucs, uh, Chinooks, not sure. Some of these I'm going to mispronounce, and I apologize for that, everyone. And Scandinavian trolls are documented kidnapping humans or luring them away. This mirrors contemporary alien abduction narratives, complete with missing time, altered consciousness, and involuntary displacement. And so, yeah, I think that I'm sure we've all heard of different accounts of people losing time and/or just having these weird experiences when they're again trying to sleep in their own home. Um, Again, my experience I had, uh, I I had an experience years ago, and I'll just go over this real quickly, uh, where my I was at home and I fell asleep one night. I don't know what time it was. It was after dark, and I had a experience where I woke up somewhere else. And I could feel it was somewhere else because it was a table or a bed, but like a hard plastic bed, and the and I could see I was not at home, and that there were the blue and they had these white cabinets or technology in them, and there were these two or three gray blurs moving around around me and this table, and all I could see above me was just light, and I could barely move except for my head a little bit. And I heard my parents' voices saying everything is going to be fine, or basically something like that. But they had no emotion. And when I looked in the direction of where I saw or heard them, I just saw two more of these gray blurs. And I saw something coming down from the ceiling of this room, which was just solid light. So either it was just a really bright light or it was one solid field of light. I'm not sure. It was a robotic arm, and it came down, and I was getting more and more panicked because I couldn't move, and it had a needle at the end of it, and the whole thing ended when it touched my left eye, and I freaked out, but everything went dark after that, and then I woke up back at home, and I don't know how much time passed because I didn't look at the clock because I was so freaked out. I just woke up and did not go back to sleep again for the rest of that morning, whatever time that was. But that is a common thing now. A lot of people think that modern it's a possibility that modern aliens are fae of some kind, or fairy of some kind, or some similar being, and abduction experiences are part of that. And there's some kind of connection between the two, where they're the same, but they're just seen differently by people now. And again, that could go back to that whole possibility um, of these beings having the ability to alter our perceptions of things, and to the point where that's how they think that we think they should look, and so that's how they appear to us.
Well, I've heard the same thing, and I think everybody, when they're thinking about alien abduction, I mean, it goes there to some extent as far as thinking about, this has been recorded throughout history. People have talked about this. Clearly, it's a violation. It's predatory. We do it all the time, like to other creatures and things like that. Not even on purpose, but so there is even that possibility. But to abduct, I mean, there's a lore of creatures that are so close to humans, but are not human, and that they are long lived, unusually so, but they can only reproduce once. I've heard this amongst the idea of trolls and things like that. And I often think it's them, like when people talk about the abduction stories and things like that. Or you have my labs, the
Right.
military labs, that there's no rule with the idea that these creatures we talked about being, any creature you can imagine, I guess, would be not off the table. Because if you look around our planet, there is nothing at a, you know, microcosmic level, all the way up to the greatest mammals that couldn't be included in the concept that in the true world we see daily, not being, and I'm not trying to be dangerously thinking, but there's no reason to think that they could not make agreements or deals with humans, a type of being like we were talking about that there is not known to the zoological world, for example, but
Right.
are known to some people. like some people in certain positions or something like that at a conspiratorial level. But there's no reason that they couldn't make deals with people if they have a type of intelligence that is not human intelligence, but it's type of impressive intelligence that is competitive with humanity, but is different. That they could not. Why could they not make agreements with humans in positions of influence in the world of humanity, where people
Right.
could be abducted, for example? If you know what I mean. I mean that wouldn't be out of the question. If there was an exchange system, it wouldn't be out of the question. If there is a dulce base, that's not that outlandish. That's not violating any type of. There's no rules in the system of the world, as we know it, as far as life and what the way life displays itself. If it happens to be predatory, as we can see, that is often the case, or they can be completely, neutral and still have something to gain or something that they are, curious about. But lore does support it across, all time of people having these types of experiences, you know,
Yeah,
whatever it
and I
comes
mean,
to. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that that's the other thing too is that there's this idea that they're all bad or they're all good, but that's very much a human way of looking at them. And if they're not human, then they may not have that same sort of set of thinking of things as wrong, right or wrong, or ethical, moral, not, and all that. So um, I think that's always something to consider as well. Let's see, my Discord just went black for a second and came back. So
Oh,
hopefully I'm still here.
what you were saying there about moral systems. I
Yeah,
mean, humans are very, they think it's cut and dry about what's right and what's wrong. If they're looking, unless they're examining it really, because life has made them do so. But
right.
if you say that it's wrong, that, you know, this should happen or this should happen because it's unfortunate and it's the worst thing that could happen. If you made it so that that could not happen, you're limiting the level of freedom that is, endowed to all of the life that's existing. And no one has to like it. But if we believe that, freedom, the autonomy of any given creature to exist how it does, it makes a lot of allowance for things you may not like. That may
Right.
seem wrong, but if you take that away, it takes away the other half. So right and wrong is very difficult, certainly, to pin down, and especially if you apply it to other creatures and what is right and wrong. But if you have it all going on in a big sauce pot of the world as we think of it, um, it is very, complicated about morality, how that fits in.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. So the next one we get to here is underworld and/or afterlife hierarchies and excuse me, interdimensional realms. Greek Hades, Norse Hell, that's Hel, Egyptian Duat, Mesopotamian underworlds, and American underworlds all feature structured realms with guardians, judges, trials, and soul progression. Modern paranormal experiences often describe encounters with otherworldly dimensions, entities existing in separate planes, and the concept of liminal spaces between worlds. And I know in some mythology, the underworld was not just a spiritual world; it was a physical place, if I'm not mistaken. And that to me is fascinating. The idea of the underground being this idea of the underground being where people go even outside of their body, because obviously bodies are usually, in a lot of cases, put in the ground somewhere. The idea of that other world being beneath the ground is fascinating, and especially when it's there, but also you can't always access it unless there's special circumstances or unless you have passed on yourself. To me, is fascinating as well. But I the hierarchy is fascinating. The guardians, judges, trials, all that. This idea of there being rules and regulations and beings in charge of things is fascinating. I don't know how I always like it because again, uh, some stories seem like they don't always go extremely well, but yeah, that's a fascinating concept to me. This idea of all around the world, there's ideas of what the afterlife or the spirit world looks like and where it is, and if there's more than one or not as well.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be okay with a person. A person
Right.
doesn't have to say that they like that there are rules. You know, that's the important thing is that there is an option. You know, so like obedience for because there's no other choice. What is that? You know, like but obedience when you have the option to disobey. That's it's not. I'm not saying it's reasonable, but I'm saying that still allows a lot. A person, even if they take up a faith or if they want to believe this certain idea or that one, the option that they don't have to like it, they can revolt against it. Let's say that there is a system. I mean, hypothetically, if, for example, in the Fae lore, they talk about, like in fairy lore, that there's a Seelie, meaning good, and an unseelie, meaning bad, court that of these unseen beings that are living alongside humanity, and that they had made an agreement a long time ago about how they're going to deal with humans in particular because of the nature of humans as a creature. And they see themselves as being, you know, it's kind of, it almost parallels the Jinn and the angel lore, that they see themselves as being on par or above to some degree because they observed or watched, you know, the development of humanity. That's in a lot of the different folk tales like that. But just because there is a system that is set in place, or that there are natural laws in place, ones that you don't agree with, like nobody wants to agree with that suffering is reasonable or that there's some good reason for it. So,
Right.
but you don't have to. You don't have to agree with that, and you can die even in that mindset. You know, you can choose indefinitely as far as if those rules apply, if that is the case, is what I'm saying. If the
Right.
option is always there, and it appears to be, then, and it's not necessarily that's bad or good, it's just that that's what I'm going to do, or I'm not going to do this. It is up to the individual. I do think that this is a very individualistic system based off the creature that's existing. And how do you break the rules of a system like that, except that if there must be something that is kind of setting the pace because the rules in our world, in nature, that are, you know, inalienable. You're born, you die. You know, those are definitely set. You are set to the same exact thing as everyone else. Everything is treated all the same, at least on a natural realm level. And as in a human mind, we that's difficult for us, I think. You know, people think there should be some kind of reward, or they, you know, they're better than this person, or this person was such a good person. How could this happen to them? So it doesn't necessarily we have to agree with it, but it does seem to be like that. And if there is some kind of ancient creatures, if there are some type of ancient creatures that have already laid a framework of what they think a good judicial system is, it wouldn't be unimaginable that humans, if they're following after them in some way, should pick up the same type of judicial system that seems to work so well. And it could be that it's just simply ancient humans being an entirely, different makeup, because we're not the only creature, the only hominid. There have been other hominids prior to humanity that we even accept in our own science out in the open.
Right.
That, so there's that. It's interesting.
It is. And that's a good way to bring us to our next thing here. We'll do a couple more, and I think that'll probably be good for tonight. But this next one is something we talked about before, actually, in previous shows. Spirit possession and demonic control. Spirit possession, as described in ancient mythologies across Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, African traditions, and Southeast Asian cultures, mirrors modern paranormal accounts of uh, demonic possession, entity control, and cases of behavioral and or consciousness uh, alteration attributed to non-human intelligence. We covered this in a again sort of possession not always being negative, which I thought was fascinating as well when we did a show on that a while ago. And so again, this is all things that we've kind of talked about in different ways, and we probably always will. They're just themes that are going to come up over and over again. And yeah, it's again, it's there's connections in all around the world, which is also fascinating. So, but and I do think the names and all that can be there's a lot of weight that goes behind or is given to different names for all these beings, but it doesn't always seem like they do exactly or are exactly the way everyone thinks they are or should be as well.
Yeah, I mean, people completely losing their compass, that's one aspect. Like a person who has just put themselves in such conflict with who they thought they were, or something has come up that has completely crashed their complete understanding of life at a very root level. Something traumatic, even, could spur where they're starting to lose their grasp on what's actually going on in their world, a sort of, a crack in the psyche for them. And then something sort of settling in to that, there's that aspect. Demonic possession that's typically, that's oftentimes described as the catalyst for that. And demons, as we were describing them earlier, if it's true, if it's possible, if that's the way, they're sort of this type of real world presence that's able to encapsulate the passions, the inspiration, and it's a literal sort of, when they come around where you are, they create that type of energy around them. So it's not, but I know that sounds like it might be esoteric or spiritual, but it's not. There are creatures that have impact like that. I mean, if you've ever come across or looked at it, psychological impact around certain animals, for example, if you've ever come into contact with, say, like a panther or a lion, the effect, I mean, it is so powerful to even see it, what it spurs inside of you. If you just, there's no cage, there's no fence. And with demons, the idea is that the presence that is emitting that, even if it's not seen, there's it's like almost like a smell sort of concept. Like if you smell something, or if you feel something, like if you feel heat or cold. So they're often described in some contexts. It's not purely just like these husks that are out to feed, but that's not so different. Those same types of energies could be on the opposite spectrum of a positive. So I mean, I don't think I was clear that, on a positive side and then on a negative side, but either way, there could be something that inspires that. And if a person were to lean in too far, into, say, desperation or something like that, somebody, or anger, say a rage, and they often don't know what came over, or there's even cases now where people describe that there might even be a type of technology that just kind of eventually like it's the whole like voice to skull technology and things like that. I've heard about that on the fringe networks and things like that. But the concept of
Right.
them being able to actually change the brain wavelengths, to some degree, so that the person, not to go on too long about it, but there's also
No,
the
you're fine.
concept of possession as a viral organism, that
Right.
a person, say that you get a bubonic plague. It's a virus that was inert until it got into the host, you know? And then through the host, it was able to show its full potential through its host. And the way it's displayed is horrific. The way it expresses itself is a nightmare. And there's a lot of that kind of symbology too in possession, in books about it and things like that. About what the creature is displayed once it's inside of a host, you know?
Right. And this makes me think of too the idea of, you know, we have this idea of positive versus negative, but any kind of overwhelming obsession or focus on one, whatever that may be, writing, poetry, or whatever, if you do that to the extreme and you don't do anything else, there's going to be other problems that develop in your life. If you don't take care of yourself physically, if you cut yourself off from others just to focus on this one thing, and I mean, again, the idea of extremes never being good, I think, is a very important thing overall because good things can be bad too if they are taken to extremes. So
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
they've always, I think, I think if people are paying a close enough attention, which is hard to do, everyone gets that kind of feeling that they think that they're, I'm working too much, or, I'm
right,
sleeping too much. I'm not doing enough, actually. Or, you feel it when it starts, you can tell. But if you were to not do that and you were to let it go on for a long time, eventually you may not recognize yourself, that kind of thing.
yeah. Well, I think we'll go through one more check or one more bullet point here, and then we'll call it a night. This last one is somewhat connected as well. Guidance and psychopomp figures in Greek mythology. Hermes or Charon, Charon, if I could read. Uh, in Egyptian tradition, Anubis, and numerous cultures, specific deities or beings guide souls through death or transitions. Modern paranormal reports similarly describe uh, encounters with guide like entities assisting humans through altered or transformative experiences. And that is that can be end of sort of near the end of a life, but that can also just be through again, it says transitions. That does not mean necessarily um, the end of life, the last transition, so to speak. And I think that's where a lot of reports of, I mean, that's the whole idea. Angels, in some cases, um, all those things are also. I've heard so many reports of that, and even figures that seem to be they're frightening people, but they still have message people, and the people take these messages to heart. They can still have positive experiences, even if let's say the energy of whatever presence they felt was a lot, and so therefore was frightening to them at the time.
Yeah, I think that they're, you know, a being that's an authentic being that's there when there's no going back. Like if you have like the angel of death, as you think of it, they're guarding it, but that's where they are in the instance of that. And you can't enter. You're supposed to enter, and there's kind of a no, this concept of it'd be very I don't know. We can't bend it to what we want it to believe, you know. there's this finality about crossing certain thresholds, and they're guarding them clearly. The whole concept of it makes sense that way. So, otherwise, it's
Yeah.
kind of a
Yep.
pay the toll, but that could be in any aspect of the daily. It could be, but a point of no return, I think, is where they show up. Or something is going to
Right.
happen. It's going to change everything forever for you. You know.
Yeah. Yep. I tell this story once in a while. There was one point where I was trying to make a decision about a couple of things, and I knew what I wanted to do. And in my mind, I was sitting there with my eyes closed and just thinking about things. And in my mind, I saw this image, which I don't know where it came from. It's not sort of typically the kind of imagery I think of, but I saw this light in my mind's eye that came from nowhere and almost made like a figure with like wings, kind of like a really vague figure of like what you might think of as an angel, even though I'm kind of I don't really have any specific beliefs regarding any of that anymore, just because of everything I've read and everything. But I got this image in my mind, and then I got this voice. It was my own. It was my own mind, but I didn't recognize it, and I didn't intentionally think it. But it basically said, "Go ahead, everything will be okay either way." And I did, and the thing kind of worked out was fine. And other thing didn't work out, but again, after a while in the end, everything was still fine. And so it was accurate. That message, wherever it came from, whether it was some other being outside of me or my own self, I don't know. The message was accurate, and I think that's fascinating as well when that happens.
Yeah, I think that there's,
So,
I mean, the guidance aspect of it, that you can go,
mhm.
like when you're going through life, well, what kind of difference will, one way or the other towards, some kind of absolution or something. But the whole idea of what we were talking about earlier, even with people having a personal um, genius, a personal spirit guide of some kind, something like that, that they, kind of nudging you this way or nudging you that way. Because I don't know, power of mind that people are unaware of, or there literally is some type of entity in different, stories that I've heard about that, people describe that there's something like luck. Like there's like in Egyptian lore and things like that, they talk about in a Norse lore that, you have a soul, you have a spirit, and you have something else, and they have a name for it. And it's basically luck. And the more that you feed into like doing bold things, did thing that here, because you're being bold. And so that's really interesting.
Right,
There could be all kinds of different entities that are, and it's true, not every action has to be some kind of absolute thing. Some things are birth, death, things like that are very important things. And just like angels can't interact, the concept that angels may not be there to catch you fall has to be an acceptable idea also. Angels may have more important
right.
things to do. I mean, there might be
Yeah, yep,
certain ideas or things like that that actually affect the universe at some level. If all of humanity were to be wiped out at once, that's kind of the concept of what like an archangel would deal with. And they wouldn't step in before that because it would interfere with free will. So there's it's interesting. And the idea that, for example, like the Archangel Michael, Archangel Michael, it's to be empowered by the memory of what was once done by Archangel Michael when the world was almost defeated, for example, by all the evil that was in it from humanity itself, expressing, their own confusion with, how are they living with, there's so much freedom of will. to where it almost destroyed itself.
Right.
So it's interesting like that. But yeah, personal type of the soul, the spirit, the power of that, luck, taking chances. They all have a type of power a person can be infused with or take, energy from. And then there are other levels of perhaps real entities that are, at a very intense level, and they may not be, what answer. For example, the same thing with praying to saints. It's not that the saint comes and does it for you. You in Catholicism, for example, or in certain types of Eastern, in traditional, Christianity in a way. The saint is not there to do it for you. You remember that they did it before you did, for example. Like they have went through this before, and by invoking them, it gives you the strength to remember it can be done.
Okay. Yeah. That's I'd never heard of that before, but that makes sense. Um, but yeah, I think that's a good place to start with this for now. Just as a preview for not next week's show, I think we'll answer this next, but just the next couple of bullets we'll be talking about next time we pick up the series again. Next couple of bullet points and order versus chaos narratives. There's flood and cataclysm narratives, which is always fascinating. Um, time distortion and other world encounters. Again, we kind of touched on that earlier too. And then altered states of consciousness and trance experiences. So there's a lot to go forward with next time we continue the series here. So Jen, thank you for being here, uh, you're amazing as usual. And look forward to talking with you again whenever you're able to join me next.
I was really glad to be able to make it tonight, and I had a great time talking with you, James, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. And everyone, please, like I said, follow Jen and her channel. A couple of quick notes on this before I start recording. I will be changing my recording schedule. I mentioned it below, but I already mentioned that, so I won't go over it again. But looking forward to doing more shows here, and yeah, I also just a reminder, I've been doing shows on Sundays with Ricky over on the Anything Is Possible channel on all things paranormal, and I'm excited for that tomorrow night as I record this. Tomorrow is actually my birthday, so go to spend the night. Then tomorrow, than just hanging out with friends and talking about all these subjects. Going from there. So let me get the recording bot ready to stop here. But thank you all for listening, and we'll continue this, like I said, in 2 weeks. I always like to do experiences shows, so I'm gonna go back to that next week. And let me see here. Did I get no? I didn't spell it. I can spell it anyway. Yeah, so that's the plan for next Saturday. Going back to, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.